At some point in your 40s or 50s, something shifts. A quiet crisis is possible. And you realize that you were the most interesting, most alive, most yourself you have ever been. And almost nobody around you has noticed. You know what I mean? It's like the culture has a script for people our age, becoming comfortable, wanting less, being grateful, what you've had, and not making too much noise about what you still want, what you still need. I rejected that script this year in the most ridiculous and wonderful way I could think of. I enrolled in university in a fairly challenging degree first year. I sit in tutorials and lectures with 18-year-olds. I'm writing essays and doing readings at midnight or at 4 a.m. before my insane commute. I'm completely starting over on purpose with my whole body and soul. And this week, I studied Plato's Symposium, a text written around 385 BC about a dinner party where a group of Athenian men take turns giving speeches about the nature of love and desire. And I am lying here tonight immersed in the meanings that I am pondering, because Plato, writing almost 2,500 years ago, described something I have never heard anyone articulate about this exact moment in my life. He described the thing you are reaching for when you are not done yet, when you know in your bones that the best of you is still ahead, when desire is driving you forward and towards something you cannot fully name. I want to talk to you about that tonight, because I think you know exactly what I mean, or at least curious to take this little journey with me now. There is a person out there watching this, and I think there are a lot of you, who has everything they're supposed to have and still feel like they're reaching for something they cannot name. You may have that picture book life, but what's going on inside is what's important. And the culture calls this a crisis, a phase. Are you living it now? Where they say, you should be grateful, you should be settled, you should be wanting less by now. Don't worry about it. And what if this is not working for you? It's never worked for me, and some people might disagree, but I think there's a lot of people right now saying, well, hang on, this doesn't feel how I want things now. And what if it is the oldest, most human impulse there is that can be summed up in just one word that you've never heard? Actually, I know it. I'm going to share it with you at the end of this video. And this word might change how you see everything you thought was wrong with you or your desires. So, Plato, ancient Greek philosopher, student of Socrates, who was, by the way, sentenced to death. And as explained by my professor, he drank poison to avoid the usual way of death when one is sentenced to die. I believe they would throw you off a cliff and then beat your body to a pulp with clubs. So yeah, I would go the poison as well. Just sort of beat them to it, which is what Socrates did. And his work was mostly destroyed or lost, unfortunately, and some academics even question whether Socrates existed at all. But we want him to exist, so let's say that he did. Plato writes the Symposium in prose, which was unusual because normally everything was epic poetry back then, 2,500 years ago, and it was meant to be performed, and it's easy to remember when it's sort of like in poetry format. So this is a dinner party, a symposium. In ancient Athens, men would gather, drink, and share ideas. Our modern symposium is a business conference with PowerPoint and no wine. So theirs was better for sure. So the setting. Athens, around 416 BC, a playwright named Agathon has just won a major drama competition and is celebrating at his house. Everyone is hungover from the night before. Apparently they didn't drink at all, not till the end. Anyway, and instead of their usual chaos, they decide to entertain themselves with speeches, as you do. Each person around the table will give a speech in praise of Eros, the god of love and desire. So a speech in praise of love, basically. Let me take you around the table. The first to speak is Phaedrus, and he makes a point that I think gets overlooked because it sounds simple. Desire is one of the oldest forces in existence, and his argument is that love inspires us to acts of courage and nobility. The person in love wants to be their best self. That desire is not weakness, it is the engine. The wanting or yearning you feel toward the degree, the business, the creative life, the version of yourself you haven't quite become yet. That is not a problem. That is the oldest thing in you. He also discusses the idea of honor and doing good things for the one you love. Maybe it's you. Maybe you are who you love. Your desire is your fuel. It has always been, and now it's burning inside you. The word desire, we use it so casually. I desire this, I desire that. But the Latin root of the word breaks down like this: de, away from, sidus, the stars. So desire literally means the ache of being away from the stars, the longing felt when the divine signal goes quiet, the gap between the human and the sacred, that reaching upward towards something that feels just out of reach. That's desire. That is what you have been feeling. You are someone who can feel the distance between where you are and where the stars are. And you are climbing toward them. And that is the whole point. Next is Pausanias. And he makes a distinction that I find genuinely useful. He says there are two kinds of love. There's common love, purely physical, about the body, fleeting, kind of lust, about the surface of things. And then there's heavenly love, love of the soul, of virtue, of the mind, the higher and more enduring form. And we'll skip over the misogynistic skew on this one. Let's just look at the kernel of truth that Plato is hoping to extract here. He's making an observation about maturity, about what happens to desire as you deepen as a human being. He's talking about that desire or love that burns from within, that transcends stuff and physical pleasure and feeds our soul. Like we are finally satiated. I don't know when it happened for me exactly, when I stopped wanting what looked good from the outside. Well, mostly. I'm a really visual person, but I started wanting what was true, what was real, and what had depth. And this is what motivated a lot of the changes I've made in recent years. And this is not a midlife cliche. This is like the Plato hierarchy. You've graduated, you are no longer interested in common love. You want the heavenly kind, and that wanting is going to drive you somewhere extraordinary if you let it. Next is from the doctor in the house. I have trouble with his name. It's like Eri Ixmachus. I'll put it up on the screen. But his theory is famously boring compared to the others, I think, but I have to add him. His general point is that harmony and rhythm are good for you. And I guess medically and with music, like his theory goes a long way, but this is not our thing tonight. So now we get to Aristophanes. He's the comedian, and he tells the most famous story in the entire text. In ancient Greece, people would look to tragedy for truth, not to comedy for the truth. So I think it's very lovely that the story that resonates with us the most is from the comedian at the table. He says that originally humans were not the shape we are now. We were round. We had 4 arms, 4 legs, 2 faces, complete, powerful, and perfect. And we were so complete, so powerful, that the gods became jealous and afraid of us. So Zeus took a piece of string and cut us in half, split us right down the middle, twisted us around so our faces pointed outward, and then left us wandering the earth, incomplete, always longing, always searching for the other half of ourselves. Now, Everyone hears this story as being about romantic love, about finding your person, your other half, your soulmate, your twin flame. But I want you to hear a different version tonight. What if the other half you are looking for is not a person? What if the wholeness you are seeking, the thing that feels just out of reach, the version of yourself that feels almost there, but not quite? What if that is the half of you that you haven't fully become yet? The scholar, the artist, the creator, the woman or man whose interior life finally matches their exterior life. The person who is living fully in accordance with everything they actually are. Maybe you're not looking for someone to complete you. Maybe you are looking for yourself. I know that's big. Okay, Agathon speaks next. Here's the host, the playwright, and he is showing off, but he says something beautiful. Love doesn't just find beauty, love creates it. Love inspires it. Love draws beauty out of things that didn't know they were beautiful. I think about my 35 years plus in design when I hear this, making beautiful things for other people, building brands, crafting visual worlds. I spent decades thinking of what, that meant for me as a career, as a profession, and making things beautiful was a way to pay the bills. And then Agathon makes me think it was something else entirely. It was devotional somehow. It was an act of love repeated thousands of times during those decades. Now I realize that your creative life is not separate from your spiritual life, and it never was. I have exerted so much energy into keeping them separate. I can't believe it, but here I am realizing it's actually one thing. Okay, and now we get to Socrates. Socrates. He stands up and proceeds to tear Agathon's speech to shreds. Let's be polite and call it a deconstruction. And then he goes on to say, I don't actually know much about love, but I was taught about it once by a woman. Her name was Diotima, and she is the only woman in the entire text in a room full of fairly brilliant men competing to explain love, of course. We all know this, but it is laid out here in quite a radical act that the woman that holds the deepest wisdom is brought up right at the end by Socrates, the master himself. So what did Diotima teach him? First, that love is not a god. It's not eros. Love is a spirit that moves between the human and the divine, always carrying messages, always in motion, neither fully mortal nor fully divine. And love is not the possession of beauty. Love is the desire for beauty, the reaching toward it, the longing itself is the point, not the arrival. It's the hunger. This is why love always feels like longing, because the moment you have something, you are already reaching for the next thing. Love is not the destination. Love is the movement, the motion. And then she describes something she calls the ladder of love. And this is where I want you to really lean in. She says, desire, properly followed, ascends. It starts small and it climbs. And you begin by loving one beautiful thing, one person, one idea, one place. Then you realize that beauty is not unique to that one thing. You start to love beauty itself, wherever you find it. Then you realize beauty of the soul is more valuable than beauty of the body. And then you love beautiful ideas, beautiful knowledge, beautiful ways of living. And finally, you keep climbing and you arrive at beauty itself, absolute, eternal, unchanging. the thing that all beautiful things are pointing toward. This is philosophy, but it's also a map of what happens to you as you mature as a human being. Every time you stopped being satisfied with the surface of things, that was the ladder. Every time you wanted something deeper, something truer, something more, that was the ladder. Every time the life that looked fine from the outside but wasn't enough, that was the ladder. You have been falling in love with wisdom. You have been climbing it your whole life and striving for something we can now name. And I'll tell you the word in a moment. Nearly there. Now, Socrates and Plato circle around something in the Symposium that Aristotle, Plato's student, would later name precisely. The word is eudaimonia. It gets translated as happiness, but that translation is flat. It's not enough. Happiness is a feeling, and we know it's temporary. It depends on whether things are going well today or if the weather's to your liking or your bank account's looking okay or whether someone was kind to you this morning. That's what happiness depends on, but we're talking about something more. Eudaimonia is something completely different. It's a condition of being. It is what happens when you are living in full alignment with your aret, your excellence, your unique human capacity, the thing you specifically are here to do and be. You don't feel eudaimonia, you live it. It's what your life looks like from the outside and feels like from the inside. When you're completely, unapologetically, fully yourself. And I want to ask you something directly. What if everything you have been searching for, what if that was never about happiness? What if the restlessness, the wanting, the refusing to wind down, the feeling that the best of you is still ahead, what if that is not your problem? What if that's your excellence, trying to find its full expression? I want to tell you what eudaimonia looks like in my actual life right now because it doesn't look tidy. I'm sure you can relate and you might realize that you're in this state too. I'm a first-year undergraduate student at 54. I run a publishing imprint. I have a podcast. I'm thinking of writing a second novel and I'm working on my third screenplay. I have a shamanic practice. I've spent over 35 years as a graphic designer and creative director. I have children. I have animals. I have a channel called In Bed with Belle that I started a week ago and I can't stop thinking about this. So, from the outside, it does look like chaos. I sure hear about that from my family and my friends. I look like someone who can't make up their mind. I get teased about it. I just don't really respond because I know my own truth. And, people assume that I'm someone that does too much and doesn't finish anything. So, that's wrong. From the inside, it feels like one thing, one continuous reaching toward the same destination through every different doorway I can find. This isn't chaos. This is one person living in full accordance with their nature. This is eudaimonia in progress. It's messy, unfinished, underfunded, and absolutely alive and kicking. Plato and Aristotle would not look at my life and see a problem. They built entire philosophies around the idea that human flourishing, full expression of your unique excellence, is the whole point of being alive. So let me reflect something back to you. If you have ever been told you want too much, if you have ever felt guilty for not being satisfied with a life that looks fine from the outside, if you have ever felt like the most alive version of yourself was still ahead of you, If you have ever looked at your life in the quiet moments and thought, this is not all of it. I am not done, and there is something more, and I don't know what it is yet, but I know it's there. Plato wrote about you. Aristotle named you. And Diotima, the only woman in the room, the one who understands love most, she understood you best of all. You are not having a crisis. You are on the ladder and you are ascending. This is what In Bed with Belle is. Me, fresh from a lecture or fresh from life, lying here, trying to make sense of it all out loud, because I think there are people watching who are tired of being told that they're reaching for more is a problem. It is not a problem. It is eudaimonia looking for a way in. And I'm happy to share it with you. So if this landed for you, click that subscribe button. We are going to study the most interesting humans, texts, art, and whatever else happens, and figure out what they have to say about the lives we are actually living right now. Sort of connect all the dots and see what new ideas that we get.